Hi, everyone. On today's podcast, I have Michael Lau. Many of you guys know him as one of the founders of the Prehab guys. Michael graduated from UCLA for his undergrad, and he received his doctor of physical therapy from USC. He has a special interest in treating ACLs and lower extremity injuries in athletes, so I knew I had to get him on the show. Welcome to the show, Michael.
Hey, thanks, Wes. Appreciate it. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, definitely. We already kind of talked a lot before we even got on here, and I know that we're gonna get into a lot of this topic about ACL rehab, so I'm excited to get into this episode. Michael, do you mind just kind of sharing a little about like what you're doing right now and just your PT journey a little bit?
Yeah. So, like you mentioned, went to UCLA for undergrad. We just lost USC 2 days ago. NCAA tournament bid coming. I don't know. Hopefully, we make it in. But so I went to UCLA for undergrad, took a year off. I always thought I wanted to go and be an orthopedic surgeon. But I've always been into like entrepreneurship and business and finding more and more about the route that it would take to become a surgeon. That's the part I wasn't sure about. Then I took a job as an aide, fell in love with it within like 2 weeks. I was like, okay, I want to be a physical therapist. Then applied to PT schools. Luckily for me, I'm in LA. Like SC is like, 15 miles or 2 hours, down the freeway. So applied there, went to PT school, and then since then I've been treating on the west side in Santa Monica. So I'm treating there, a lot of patients. I'm in a gym setting now, so it's really awesome. It's basically high school to like mid-30s, I would say. It's a very, very active population. It's a completely different treatment style than I used to do more in the outpatient hospital setting. So really, really fun. And I just love having space, having equipment, and having people that are motivated. I think that's huge.
Yeah. I think that you and I probably share a lot of the same philosophies when it comes to treatment, and also just the demographic that we kind of enjoy treating, which is why I was like, I got to get Mike on the show. And it just made sense for us to dive into this conversation. And I kind of just want to hit the ground running.
Yeah, let's do it.
And why do you enjoy treating ACLs?
I enjoy them for a multitude of reasons. I think one of them just speaks to my background in strength training. I love implementing that with every single person I can. And I know I'm for sure going to get there with ACLs. It's not just someone that just has an acute episode of pain, and once they're out of pain, they feel like they're okay. And I don't get to that stage, which is fine. That's totally fine based on their goals. But I know with that demographic, with any, more major surgery, we're going to get to that point. And an ACL is a big injury for anyone that's had it or anyone that hears about it. And it could be a very low point in someone's life. And you have the ability to really, you're at a fork in the road when you undergo surgery, or maybe the point where you're thinking of undergoing surgery, to this being a life-changing experience for the positive, or for it being a life-changing experience for the negative. And it really depends on how the next year goes. And it's not just the year, but everything that goes into that year. So being able to help, especially the younger athletes, like the high schoolers at that fork, like there's a lot of them now that like, I want to go into PT, I want to be an athletic trainer, because of their experience. And that's really cool for me.
Yeah, it's almost like the side benefit of treating younger people. And I don't know what it was like for you being exposed to physical therapy, but I was never exposed to physical therapy until I tore my ACL. I was after I graduated college, unfortunately, but it literally changed my life and the trajectory of my life. And it brought me into this field for the better. And to this day, I still will never take back tearing my ACL. And it's really cool working with, similar to you, these 15, 16, 17-year-olds, and they just like, what do you want to do with your life? And the typical answer is like, I don't know. And then like the way that you treat, I know that you guys like you make it fun, you make it engaging, and it's kind of like, it gets them thinking about, oh, maybe this is a cool field for me. So it's kind of a side benefit from working with ACLs. And just to piggyback on what you said, I am 100% in agreement with you, because it's such a long journey. Like you said, it's hopefully it's 9 months to a year, sometimes a little bit longer. It happens, but it's really cool to be a part of that experience from day one, unwrapping that knee for the first time, seeing the blood, all that kind of stuff. And then, just work. And then you get them back to the field, you go to their first game. And it's just, for me, that's what it's all about. That's kind of why I love being a part of the whole process. And it seems like you are in full agreement with me. It's just, I don't know. It's invaluable. You know what I mean? Like a lot of injuries, like, 2-3 months, it still can be lengthy, but something about ACLs, maybe it's just because I've torn both of mine, and you kind of just, you just go into it. But I didn't have a physical therapist like you, so I wish I did.
Well, you are that physical therapist now to many countless kids, you
I hope
know.
so.
And what
I
you're
hope
saying too,
so.
that year long, if you're only 16, that's 1/16 of your life. Like that's a
Seriously.
big chunk of it, you know, that you're
Yeah.
spent getting to not just in rehab, but getting to know you or getting to know the therapist and forming those bonds and those relationships. So
Yeah.
it's really empowering for those younger kids.
Yeah.
It's really empowering. You know, just
Yeah.
life skills. I talk to them about what they're learning in school, nothing like, or you know, whatever it may be, and just helping them with all that stuff. You know, it's just it's fun. They're fun working with youth.
It's good to know that East Coast kids and West Coast kids are the same because we're obviously on two different coasts and they tell me the same thing. So it's good to know that the consistency is still there even with the
Yeah,
West Coast students. But yeah, it's the same thing. I tell them I I ask the same question like, what did you learn in school today? And sometimes I'll even just make it more broad, just be like, tell me something that you learned. I don't care if
that's
it's about like
literally what
I
I
don't
do.
like.
It takes them a while.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
I was
just
like, I don't
sad.
care if you tell me
It
if
takes them a
like
long
you learn
time.
like I don't like to eat spinach, like something. Just engage in
Yeah,
conversation with me. So
yeah,
that's funny and ironic the fact that we both asked a similar type of question without knowing it.
yeah.
Um,
One girl last week literally is just like, I don't know. I was like, well, what did you like? Just tell me just tell me one thing. Cause I like
yeah,
learning through them. Like I learn a lot. Like, oh yeah, that president. So I don't remember those things. I'm
yeah.
not good with pop culture, like or history or so when they're telling me stuff about the president, I'm like, oh yeah, I didn't know that happened with Nixon. Like I learned about Nixon the other day. I was like, I don't know.
Oh, that's good. Because most of the kids that come in to see me, they just try to get me to like dab and whoa and all this. I'm like, I don't know what any of this stuff is. That's the general conversations I have with my athletes so far.
Yeah.
And to further on with this conversation as far as ACL rehab goes, what are your thoughts when it comes to bracing? I know it's a really hot topic and probably a question that you guys get asked regularly on your
Mhm.
social medias. So what are your thoughts?
So I guess for a patient in the clinic, if they don't bring it up, I don't either. I think it starts with there. If they bring it up, um, well, let me rewind. My goal for them is always to feel like they don't need to rely on anything
Yeah.
for, including a brace, but also including me. Like
Mm-hmm.
eventually, when they're done in rehab, I want them to feel like they've learned everything that they can do to rehab their knee for any flare-ups that happen down the road. That they kind of understand, like, okay, I got to back off a little bit now. I could do these things instead. Then I could do this because it used to feel good. Then I could progress to this. So whether I don't want anyone to have a crutch, basically, and I think of a brace as a crutch.
Yeah.
But if it's going to help someone get back to something and psychologically they need it, I'm all for that too. I'm not going to be a Nazi about it and say no, no, no. But
Yeah.
um, I try not to bring it up. If they bring it up, I explain what some of the research says regarding it, and it's all like it's driven by you. But my goal for you would be to not use it.
Do you
But
find orthopedics on the West Coast where you are pushing braces on you?
they push braces on some of the repairs early on, but
Okay.
not for their sport. But early on, there's times when they're in braces. I'm like, why are they in a brace right now? Like,
Yeah.
it's causing more fear. They're in a brace when we don't need it. But they later on, they're not pushing braces, I would say.
Yeah, that's it's pretty hit or miss when it comes to our area. We have some doctors who are like, you have to wear a brace for whatever 6 months when you return to sport. And I share the exact same philosophy as you is if they don't bring it up, we're not talking about it. And I definitely wanted to get to the point where you don't even feel like you even want the brace or even think about the brace.
Mm-hmm.
For me, one of the biggest negatives is the fact that when you slide on the brace, you are only reminded of the fact that you are recovering from an ACL tear. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And then the other big negative is the fact that it draws attention to you, and everybody else on the field knows that you are the ACL girl or ACL guy, and
Yeah,
it sucks. You know, you don't
yeah,
want to be that person. Like worst case scenario, you have a small scar in the front of your knee, and that's as big of an indicator that you need. And that's one of the bigger things that a lot of my athletes will share with me, and me wearing a Don Joy brace myself in the past, where it's bulky, it's clunky, and you just have this
yeah.
massive thing on your leg that just like, I'm still not quite there. I'm not quite like the
Yep,
other person who I'm going against who doesn't have to wear a brace.
yep.
Those are definitely my negatives. And I educate them the same way where there's like, I tell them that not a lot of evidence supports the fact that using a brace is going to be advantageous for you. So if we don't need it, then let's not use it.
So use
Um,
it. Yeah, exactly.
and they're expensive.
Ooh, yeah, really expensive. And I had this question from a patient. What do you do with them afterwards? what do you do with crutches afterwards? I didn't realize. What do you do with the scooters for Achilles repairs? I didn't realize that they just sit around, or you donate them or give them to someone else. I had no idea. I was like, whoa, that's mind blowing. I
Yeah.
don't know what people do with them. Uh, but yeah, they
Yeah.
just sit around.
And especially a brace
Um,
too, because if you only use it for like 4 months, these things are custom to fit to your knee. So
yeah,
unless you find someone for the exact same frame as you, you're not going to be able to donate that to anybody.
yeah.
And obviously, because they're they're a few $100s to even $1,000 sometimes. So it's tough to be like, here you go, take this from me.
Yep.
Yeah. So I'm
There's
definitely in
one.
the same agreement with you when it comes to wearing a brace.
It may not be relevant for ACL, but the one time I've recommended a brace is actually my brother recently, about a month ago. Had a grade 2 MCL strain, big skier, like Japan, like Europe, everywhere.
Wow.
I was like, dude, you got to really back off, like just chill for like a week or two. He's like, no, but I got this trip planned. So I was like, well, if you're skiing, you're at more risk for tearing your ACL because your MCL is not there. But you just know all these things. And swelling was, man, all that stuff was good. I'm like, you can ski. But this is one of those times when maybe you should wear a brace. And he's been wearing a brace. But then they kind of backfired early on. He was wearing a brace even during his ADLs, like walking to the store. And I was like, dude, you don't need it for that. Like, the surgeon said it would be helpful. I'm like, yes, it would be helpful for like if you're going into those positions, but not like going up and like you're going to be fine. Trust me, your knee's not that unstable.
Yeah.
But he got over that eventually. But the first week of wearing it, he was wearing it all the time. And I was like, no, just wear it when you ski. He's like, no, but I just like, I don't know. That's like the fear, the psychological side of it of wearing a brace. You feel like you're hobbled. You
Yeah.
feel like you're injured.
I mean,
So
what do you know, right? You're only a physical therapist.
yeah, yeah. I'm only his brother.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. No big
Yeah,
deal. No big deal.
yeah.
And just to and that kind of flows into the next question, but dealing with family members is obviously challenging in a sense. It can be challenging, obviously. I talked to my mom about stuff with her neck, and I'm just like, Mom, you
Oh,
should do these exercises. And she's like, okay, I got it. And I go back, it's like, Mom, do you do these exercises? No. Or like, Mom, just come drive to my facility. I can see you. And of course, she doesn't come see me. But that's a different
oh.
story. If my mom's listening, I love you, Mom. And what is your, I don't know if you can think of this, but what is the hardest ACL case that you've ever treated?
The hardest one was an auto collision accident.
Oh gosh.
It was a lot of stuff besides the ACL, delayed surgery too because of everything. Uh, well over a year and a half, and still not great, but back to soccer now. It's been a long journey, and a random weird like flare up around like the 3 month mark. No idea why. Like we just had to basically rest almost for a month and a half. Like we couldn't do anything
Mm-hmm.
because it was just so hot and sensitive. That was probably the hardest one.
How did you
Yeah.
go about like having that conversation with him? Like, did you, I guess, along the way, a lot of times when we see ACLs after ACLs, you can kind of get a gauge within the first, 2 months about how they're going to progress. Like, how did you feel and what kind of conversations did you have with him during this time?
Well, one, letting him know that okay, this stuff's a little bit out of the ordinary, but your knee is also a little bit out of the ordinary based on everything you've gone on. He understood the times when we could push it, when we could rest. There were at least 2 times I sent him back to the orthopedist too because I was like, look, I don't really know. Like this is weird. Like I remember he got off like a bike at some point, and then his knee just it gave, and all of a sudden he was in tons of pain, and it was weird. Like everything was fine. Like testing's fine, everything's stable, but just his pain levels were up for about a month and a half after that. No idea what it was. Like none. And then even later on, like over a year out, he was still having some issues with some pain, some different pains. We ended up getting an MRI. Still had bone bruises a year out, which is not uncommon, but it was crazy. Like still a pretty big bone bruise.
Mm-hmm.
We're just like, man, this is weird.
Yeah, it's one of those things that's like obviously you being a good clinician, like it's a hard conversation to have because you're like, this kid is probably coming in and working his butt off, and then you're just like it's tough because you don't really know how the body's ever going to react to a major surgery, and that's
Yeah.
one of the, not that we're going to dive into that too much today, but that's one of the negatives when it comes to ACL surgery, where I know there's a lot of research that supports non-operative nowadays. And one of the negatives is that you don't really know how your body's going to react to it. There's a certain people who there's like infections, there's scar tissue, there's cyclops lesions, there's so many other things that could potentially can happen. And, unfortunately with your situation, like that guy had to go through, he went through a traumatic injury to tear his ACL in the first place with the motor vehicle accident. And then obviously with the complications after that, it's one of those things that, I don't know, I guess for me, when I get those challenging cases, it's always hard because you're dealing with not only the person, if it's a younger kid, you're talking to his parents too, and you see how like heartbroken they are because they were told probably these unrealistic timelines about going back to, you know, and that's it's one of the most frustrating parts about what we do, because we feel like, I don't know if you feel that way, but sometimes I feel like I'm trying to do everything right and they're not progressing to what you think is going to happen. Yeah. Like and you take it personally, you know, and it takes a little while, and I'm about 5 years in now to the profession. So you kind of grow a little bit thicker skin as you go along the way. But it still doesn't make it feel any better when you're like, this person's coming in and working their butt off. They're doing everything I'm telling them to do, but unfortunately the knee is just not cooperating.
Not cooperating at all. Yeah, it's tough. It's especially tough when they have higher aspirations. If their aspirations were just maybe to get back to running or weightlifting or something, you know, it could be easier to be like, okay, like we'll get there. But when they have aspirations to like be back, it's like, okay, this is going to be a little bit longer of a longer journey than maybe was expected.
Yeah. So. And I think that if from our end, when we do feel like it's going to take it a little longer, it's the open dialogue is going to be the biggest thing. You know, if you can develop that trusting relationship with that person, which I'm sure you did, then you telling them like, hey, like this is going to be a little while, like you have complications. And like you told them, like it's out of the ordinary. And most of the time I feel like if you have that good rapport with the patient, they should trust you enough to be like, yeah, he's not doing this to hold me out or prevent me from playing soccer. They're trying to make sure that I don't have a second or third ACL tear. You're just trying to do things the right way and decrease ACL tear risk as much as possible.
100%. It's already too high.
Yeah. We'll don't worry. We will get into that for sure. Those are the final two questions. Actually, in regards to that, what are some of the tests that you use to determine whether or not an athlete is ready to return to sport?
So the first one's just timeline. I'm pretty firm about the 9 months, and that's full return to sport. They could be participating in practice, some, you know, modified things, but full, like unrestricted return at least 9 months. I have isometric testing at my clinic. Wish I had some sort of isokinetic. We do have one around, like we have knee extensions, leg press, all that stuff. A little bit less sensitive, but I do that stuff too. The hop test I do just to have. I don't really take too much from them, but it's just like another thing, like, okay, yeah, we'll do that too.
Yeah.
But those are the main ones. It's kind of sad. It's like, it's more, I'll be honest, it's more the eye test. It's like, okay, you're ready or you're not. And I'm almost doing the test for the kids that I know aren't ready, just so I can give them a number and show them they're not ready. Instead, it's just me telling them they're not ready. Or I'll think of more tests. I'll literally think of, I'll throw a Y balance out there. I'll throw stuff. I'll just throw whatever to be like, yo, you're not ready. Because I just think they're not ready. But for the kids that are ready, they really do kill it, and they look good, and they're confident. They're planting hard. They're pivoting hard. They look good. It's hard to say. Yeah. I know that looks is not everything, but the timeline, the strength are two big ones. Like they need to have 100%, if not more, quad strength back for me to feel good.
Yeah, I think the eye test is honestly something that's not really talked about too often. And yes, there's definitely some subjectivity to all that kind of stuff. But at least at our facility, we have a lot of the girls that I say girls just because that's the majority of who I see. And our owner, Matt, is pretty well known in the lacrosse world. And if one of his girls gets hurt, he'll send him to me. And it's really nice to have him there because he's worked with these girls since they were, 8th grade, 9th grade. So he's seen how they move, how they cut and all that kind of stuff. And a lot of times when I'm doing like a cutting session in the cutting phase during our session, I'll pull Matt over and just be like, hey, Matt, can you take a quick look at it and see how he looks? And if he's like, they're not loading well enough or not moving well enough, or they're shying away from that one side, it's nice to just have another set of eyes there because he's obviously seen them since, they were 8th and 9th grade, and that he can see like, oh yeah, they're just not moving very well. And it's something that's not really talked about too often. And I 100% agree with you that it should be a part of it because you can pass all these tests and sometimes you still move like crap. And if you move like crap, you probably shouldn't play.
100%.
Yeah. And do you pull out the whole tape measure for the hop test and stuff?
I have, sometimes I don't. If I need to measure it to let them know, I'll do it because a lot of them can get to the same measurement, but they look like shit. So then I'll film them too. Yeah. So that's where the hop tests are good, but they're not bad. And, it's just one of many things to throw out. And
Yeah.
I don't throw out. I guess I do hop test a lot of people, but you just take the results with a grain of salt. You're just like, okay, cool.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you. I wrote a blog post about it, but I personally actually use the hop test as more of a gauge of confidence and also landing mechanics as opposed to like strength or whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
Just because even for example, I tested a girl 2 weeks ago. She was getting cleared by her previous physical therapist based on I the whole return to sport process for that previous clinic was atrocious, to be honest. Their strength test was a single leg squat. They used a goniometer to measure how
One.
the depth, one single, yes,
Oh
the
god.
depth. And it was, I think they measured her ACL side at 84 degrees and they measured the other side at 9 degrees. And based on that math, you are 90%,
You
whatever it
are
is. Yeah.
90% there.
And then she did the hop test. And then
Oh man.
I didn't even look at her hop test yet, just like watching her, how she like did a single leg drop land and the way that she loaded her knee doing like a skater squat and stuff. I was like, there's no possible way that she is landing with good mechanics. And then sure enough, I had her do a single leg hop and then her whole body just like bent forward, like straight up
Yeah.
glute landing. And, I had her dad watching. I was just like, does this, this doesn't look right just compared to the other side. And the worst part was that she had a second ACL tear, I think like 9-10 months before that. And I don't think she ever fully recovered.
Mm-hmm.
So I did the whole strength test. We have handheld dynamometers, and I'll use the Kaiser as a power output to compare the two differences. Yeah. And she was, I believe, so she had a hamstring graft on her left side, patella tendon on the right side, and it was this perfect storm where her left quad was strong, left hamstring was weak, right quad was strong, right, and it was, you know what I mean? Like it was just the complete inverses.
Yeah.
And I was like, you should not go back to playing. Like I was like, you cannot. I would not feel even remotely good about you going back. And that was one of the more challenging ones. And then her knee wasn't even close to full range. She was at like 80% range and she had this clear cut block. And her dad just texted me recently saying that she has scar tissue in her knee and they're doing manipulation. And this girl is 7.5 months out from surgery. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and cleared to go.
Right. She was getting cleared at 8 months. And it's just, I was like, and just to kind of revert back to what we're talking about with having these difficult conversations, a lot of the times I'm talking to these younger athletes about the bigger picture, about what is your number one goal? Is your number one goal to get back for the current season, or is it to play in your freshman year of college, or you know what I mean? Yeah. Whatever it is, it's just, they have to, it's hard at that age. And I would say that you and I were probably the same when you're that age. You don't have this concept of the big picture, and being a little bit older, we're like, you got to look at the big picture, because if you think very short-sighted, you're putting yourself at risk for an injury. But that's obviously, something that we can go on a tangent of if we really wanted to.
And say too, if you're following criterion-based rehab protocol, you have gone through all of your layers. You've gone through all of your, you've gone through all your progressions. You've already seen everything. You know what they should look like, so that there's no test that's different than what you've already done with them to train.
Yeah.
So that they look good. They look good because they've been training good and they look good. And then back another step, like the timeline thing, I think maybe like 3 years ago, I would have more kids like 6 months, like I'm back or I feel good. Now I feel like every surgeon says 9, which is very awesome. The kids are already having that, but still 9's too early for a lot of them. And I had this one football guy, he's 9 months. That's my second week of the season, my freshman season. I'm like, you're not ready.
Yeah.
But he had this 9 months, so it's still, the timeline still, it's better that it's been pushed back, as what the research shows, but still the fact that there's a timeline puts that mark in people's head.
Yeah. And
which sometimes isn't the best.
And I don't know if it's like that in your area, but it's just the surgeons in our area, their words carry more weight than a physical therapist does. It's nice because a lot of the people that come see us, they're referred by the owner, Matt. So between the two of us, it's kind of like we can kind of counterbalance that a little bit. And there's still some surgeons in our area who are still pushing this 6-month timeline. And I'm exactly like you. Day one post-op, I'm telling them 9 months minimum. Exactly. But I'm not clearing you until you pass all these tests. And at the end of the day, I always phrase it that you don't have to listen to me. If your surgeon clears you and you decide to play, that's perfectly within your rights to do so. It is your own body. But I tell them that at the end of the day, I'm based on the what the research says, what the national average is for retearing, which is what currently 20 to 25%, whatever it is.
Mhm.
And then what my current average is, like, just putting together the pieces of between Teddy and I, we've only had like 2 or 3 retears in 3 or 4 years. Like we're doing pretty decent so far. But part of it is because I think we're trying to do our diligence with this return to sport testing. And I don't know, have you ever used the Kaiser for return to sport testing?
I do not, because I do not have access to it. I would love to use a Kaiser. I got
Gotcha.
experience with those at Exos. They're so fun. You
I
can do
know.
so much stuff on them,
Yeah.
like so much stuff.
The percentage output is awesome, especially just being able to isolate the quads and just sticking a box on there and just having them kick on one side and compared to the other. It's just so nice to get a
Yeah,
clear cut number, because it's like you said, our job is to also prove it to the athlete that you are not ready. We tell
yeah,
them about the research and the numbers and all that kind of stuff. And at the end of the day, the test, like, they can usually, if they're honest with themselves, they're like, yeah, I did not do as well on my ACL side compared to my non-ACL side. So it sounds like you and I have a lot of the same
yeah.
philosophies in testing. Have you ever messed with the force plate before?
We have one in one of our clinics. I got to use it once. So there's like 7 clinics and it gets passed around the 2 of us. I wish. I know Body Track. I reached out to them. They have a really cool system. I don't know if you guys use theirs. Are you talking about the portable ones or the real force plates, the research force
Like
plates?
the portable ones?
The portable ones, yeah, they're
Yeah.
so cool.
Yeah.
Dude, people are cheating for forever. Like
Yeah.
even way far out, you're like, whoa, you're still like, don't look like you're cheating, but you're definitely cheating.
Yeah. It's, to be honest, it's something that I haven't used a ton. We haven't had it for too long, but it's something that I just started to dive into more. And I just tested another one of my girls recently, just because I'm trying to use, again, like, we're just trying to use every tool that we have. And it's so nice to have that, like, clear cut data. You can compare the left side, you can compare the right side. It tells you, like, propulsion power, landing. It tells you, one of the coolest things, it tells you time to stabilize. So, like, how long it takes until your foot kind of
Mm,
levels out on the platform. And then when you do a jump on both feet landing at the same time, it'll tell you if you are landing with more force on one versus the other.
yeah,
Like, it's just, again, more
it's
data
cool.
that we can't see with the naked eye, because when I see her
It's really
jump up and
cool.
down, like, she looks even to me, but you can't really cheat the force plate.
I
So
know.
yeah,
Do
it's
you
just,
do Body Track? Is that the one you're using?
to be honest, I am not exactly sure. The one that we got, Teddy bought it a little while
Yeah,
ago, and it's definitely something that I'm going to start using for my return to sport, because,
I think
like,
it's
even when
cool.
I had her take off on a single leg hop and then coming back down, even just to the naked eye, she could not get enough. Um, Her vertical was very different, and it was just nice to,
Hmm.
again, being able to compare the vertical between the two sides. Because I think a lot of
Yeah.
times with the hop, it's just going forward, and I feel like going forward, it's a little bit easier to cheat as opposed to just going straight up and down. Yeah.
Mhm.
So it's
I would
definitely
love to
another.
use that even early on. Like people like, are they shifting away from start it's like nipping that in the butt, especially when the pain's like not that high anymore. Nipping it in the butt from early on, and like, look, you're shifting, you're shifting, you're shifting. Because naked eye, like as you were saying, it looks good, but you put them on. Like I've put people on, I'm like, whoa, you're really shifting away.
Yeah.
Like I know Sigward from SC, she's done a lot of research on that. Like a learned disuse for ACLs that goes on like months beyond, even when they look good and all, and they're back to running and all the other things.
Yeah.
So
I've looked into the body track thing, and I think I want to look into that too. Just, again, just any tool that we can have to possibly improve the outcomes is something that we are going to
mhm.
try and get our hands on. So it's definitely something that we want to get into.
Oh yeah.
And so, in the continuation for return to sport, what is your general plan for when you have a kid return to sport?
So I guess it would start off first. It's talking to the surgeon. Are they cleared? I always think of it, and I tell them 2 things. Your surgeon's going to clear you when your quote your graft and your surgery has healed to the extent that he or she likes it, where they're clearing you for those loads. And it's my job to clear everything else. I'm going to clear your muscles, your tendon, and that stuff strong enough to get back. So it's like this dual clearance. And once we get, that's the first step. You got to get clearance there. And like I said, we do all these testing. There's testing at multiple time phases, from starting at 3 months or even earlier. Just range of motion earlier on, going all the way through. And the athlete always knows, okay, what do I need to do at this point? Okay, when I did that, what's next? And going through like that. So they have all those little like mini wins, I guess you can say, that they're trying to check off. They're trying to do as they're going on. And then eventually, some coaches I can get a hold of, some other coaches I can't get a hold of. You're really lucky that you are with coaches that they're training there, because you're in a training facility. Whereas I'm taking kids from this high school or that high school or this high school. Like there's no, there's not like one, they're not part of the same team. I feel like that would be awesome if they're part of the same team or they had some sort of similar background, but they're all over the place. So getting a hold of the coach usually, or a lot of times the athletic trainer, if they're on the football team,
Yeah.
and trying to determine, okay, what's the return of participation schedule? Like, what are they going to do in practice? What are they not going to do in practice? They're going to just do lifting these days. And everyone's different, but it's really communication with whoever's in charge of them at those practices or team meetings or whatever it may be, and trying to say, okay, how is he responding, first of all? And then slowly kind of adding in more and more volume or more and more time, more and more cutting or whatever it may be. Okay, hey, we're not at reactive stuff yet, but we're doing all plan cutting. So you guys can do plan cutting in practice or whatever it may be, and just making sure we're going to working at the same echelon of where that player may be.
Yeah. Do you find it challenging for like the whole communication aspect, whether it's a phone call, an email, whatever it is? Do you find that part difficult?
So far with football teams, no. Maybe with some of the other teams, yes. I just feel like the football kids or the team, they have athletic trainers. Like you have to have an athletic trainer. It's all high schools now, but they for sure have athletic trainers on the football team, and they understand that there's a process to go through. Whereas say like the gymnastics coach that I've talked with or other people, they're just like, no, they're good. They can spin now. Like, oh, let's go. It's a little bit different. So I think they're just they have more exposure. At least for me, I don't actually have too many soccer players, but the football kids, their athletic trainers know, okay, oh yeah, there's a procedure that we have to go through to get them back.
Nice. Do you work with a lot of college athletes?
I used to at my other place. Now it's more high school.
Okay.
I would say it's a big population of high school and then post college, like 22 and on.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just curious because I think for me, one of the hardest things when it comes to dealing with another group, like another part of the rehab team, whether it's a strength coach or trainer, whatever it is, it's the dealing with the college trainer specifically, because I think, especially if they do their surgeries at school, that's what makes it the hardest, because like my rehab philosophy might be very different than what they're doing at school. So let's say a kid tears it in March, they do rehab for 2 months and then come see me in May. And then what I say is very different because maybe I don't agree with it or whatever it is. And then, or I think they're progressing too slow, too fast. And then, I see them for June, July, August, and then back to school. And then I see them for a week for Thanksgiving break, back to school. Yeah. It's just, it's very, very challenging, particularly when I don't agree with what they say. And then the kids like, what do I say? Like, they're going back and forth. They don't want to step on anyone's toes. That's just a different animal that I deal with a little more just because I see a lot of college athletes.
That would be tough. I know the couple I used to have, what I liked actually about them, and again, these are all football guys, but because they were in football in college, they had solid strength training. They were a spring ball. They were strong. Not that they were strong. I didn't have to focus all of my time and effort on strength conditioning. I could focus on all the other nuances of the movement. Whereas these other kids, these high school kids, well, they got to get strong first. That's the majority of my session because they were just so weak. Whereas the college kids were strong because they were squatting and deadlifting from like months 3, 4 on and pushing the loads because they're used to it. So I enjoyed that aspect of it. But yeah, I didn't have to do any issues with communication for those guys.
Gotcha. Yeah, communication is definitely key when you're dealing with anyone else as part of the rehab team, trainers, strength coaches, parents, athlete, whatever it is. Communication is extremely important just so everybody at the end of the day is on the same page. We had to save the two really challenging questions for last, obviously. So in your opinion, why do you think re-tear rates are so high?
I feel like it's a PT issue, unfortunately. It's a sad truth. The timeline thing is getting better. People are pushing them back. People are learning, okay, I'm not, maybe I have to do a little bit more in my rehab, or I can't just get back like Adrian Peterson. But there's just such a wide variety of what you would do in rehab. And to what you said, They might not agree with my philosophy. I hate that there has to be a philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
It should just be, this is the right way to do it, and
Yeah.
everyone's doing it. You know what I mean? There shouldn't be a this way or that way. It's just, no, this is how it should be done.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why it should be done, because it's following the research. And this is how we need to do it. And that's honestly why. And it's not many times not the individual's fault. Now, maybe it's sometimes they just don't have experience with that, or they are trying to take them through the entire continuum and they're not able to do those end stages. But a lot of PT clinics aren't equipped with strength training equipment. So if that's that clinic, they should be getting rid of these kids around 4 or 5 months, and they should be working with the trainer. Now, I've also seen that go the other way, where trainers are taking ACLs from the beginning, and that's wrong too. There needs to be this nice continuum, this nice blend, this nice pass off. Maybe I may regret it. A good PT should be able to take them from the beginning to the end. A good trainer, technically they're not allowed to, but if they're really good and they've seen a lot of them, in my opinion, probably should be able to take them from the beginning to the end too.
Mm-hmm.
But most people don't fall on those, can do both. And you need to be able to know when it's time to pass it off to someone else on both ends, on the rehab side and on the strength training side, and even the performance side, on the coach side. We're trying to all do the same thing. And I think that's when it gets a little muddled.
Yeah. And in your opinion, why, I 100% agree with you that many people will hold on to whichever side of the spectrum that you just said. And so in your opinion, why do you think people do that?
They hold on.
Yeah.
Maybe because they're in a insurance-based clinic and they're incentivized to keep their patients. Maybe honestly, that's probably not the top reason. They probably just don't know any better. I think it has nothing to do with being selfish, nothing to do with money or finances or ego. I honestly just think it's like, oh, I don't like this. This is how I've done it for 10 years in my career. This is how I was taught, or this is how I learned. They're just supposed to go to PT twice a week. Then they go to once a week. Then we do some squats and lunges, and then we run, and then we do some ladder drills. And then I like kick a ball around with them for like a little bit, and then they're good. Yeah. Like I don't think it's just a lack of knowledge, not necessarily anything like negative or mischievous or anything like that.
Yeah, it kind of flows into our next question, but at least for me, I am in agreement with you that a lot of it is having to do with PTs. But again, because I see so many people on the college level, I think that it's not just PTs. There's also athletic trainers, strength coaches. And in this area, like I said, there's some surgeons who are still telling athletes that you can go back at 6 months or some obscure timeline. And I think my biggest gripe when it comes to surgeons clearing, specifically surgeons, is that they don't spend the amount of time that we spend with them. We spend an hour twice, 2 to 3 times a week, communicating through email, text, whatever it is. We're the ones watching them squat, move, lunge, lift weights, and they don't have the time to do that. Their volume is just so high, and they're also confined to that 10 by 10 office. And the best thing you could do is watch them do a bodyweight squat. They just don't have time to assess how they move, how they change directions. Can they do reactive stuff? But we can do that. And I think that's one of my gripes, at least again in our area, is that some surgeons are clearing, and it's just they don't see a lot of the stuff that we see on a regular basis. And in agreement with you also is the fact that most facilities don't have the space, equipment, whatever it is, knowledge. There's a whole culmination of things at a standard facility. And I agree with you. And on the episode I did with our owner of Healthy Baller, I was like, it doesn't have to be Healthy Baller. I wasn't trying to promote us. It was just the fact that you need to have a good relationship as a PT if you're in a more traditional model with a local strength coach that you trust, so that you two can be a team and help that athlete get from point A to point B, which is safely back to sports. I think that not enough people are building these relationships with local strength coaches, good strength coaches, obviously, because there are bad strength coaches, just like there's bad PTs out there. And if you get good PT, good strength coach, you can get a kid way safer to going back to sport, as opposed to like, hey, let's just blindly guess about when this kid is about to go back or when he's ready to go back. And my last PT facility, we physically could not have the means to get any kid back. Impossible. We had no open space. The heaviest dumbbell we had was 10 pounds. Heaviest kettlebell was 15 pounds. So you're physically unable to load anybody adequately enough to get them back. You know what I mean?
That's
Um,
pretty par the course. I'd say
yeah,
70% of places. So
yeah, yeah. And it's just, and just like you said, people don't know. So it's not like I want to fault people for not knowing, because when I was at that facility, I was like, I got people to like 4 months, like you said, 4 or 5 months. Sometimes I would take people outside if it was like a nicer day. But even then, like I only had a half hour with the person. So let's say you take 5 minutes to walk outside, you do stuff for 10, 15 minutes, walk back inside, like there's your session, you know? So I started to refer people out to Teddy before I actually started working there, because I was like, one, I know he's good, and two, I know he has the 40-yard turf space and the equipment, all that kind of stuff necessary. So I think that it's necessary for every PT to have a good relationship with either another physical therapy facility that is a little bit more sports oriented, or a strength coach that is, that has the facility to do that late stage stuff. That I think that's one of the biggest components of rehab. And that's kind of why I not to self-promote by any means, but why I started my mastermind group, because I was like, I thought back to when I was a new grad, and I sometimes I just reflect upon it. I was like, I don't know if you do, but I just like, did I mess anyone up? Did I screw anything up?
Yes.
Yeah.
We all did.
Yeah. And it's a tough pill to swallow, because, it's, you think that you can do everything right. And unfortunately you don't all the time. Yep. But I think that's why I started my whole mastermind group, because I was just like, I got to figure out a way to provide some sort of education when it comes to ACL rehab. A lot of times, and this will, we'll just get into the next question, but why do you believe?
No, I like that. And I was going to say too, to what you said, we always want to feel like we're doing everything right, but it's just not possible.
Yeah.
And I think to what you said, it's not just a PT problem. It's anyone working with the patient. You need to have a confidence and experience and be specialized in it. And like, I know what I'm good at. I know what I'm not good at. If you have a concussion, don't come see me.
Yeah.
If you got an elbow issue, don't come see me. If you got a lower injury, lower extremity, I can handle that. Low back, I can get that. Yeah. Shoulders, no, don't go see me. Like, of course I'll have some of them, but I will be the first to tell you, you should go see this person over there, because they're probably going to do better. I can probably get you out of pain. You know what I mean? It's the same thing, knowing what you're good at. And I now refer people out all the time, not because I can't. I'm not going to not give them because I'm going to give them a B-level service, and I know there's an A+ out there. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. And knowing when to make those decisions, I think, is huge to get someone better care.
Yeah, I seriously love that. I do that all the time also. And even just, for example, a lot of people will go to my website, because Teddy and I are contractors, so we both have our own individual websites. So people maybe will find mine, and then they'll fill out the form and all that kind of stuff. They're like, oh, I have pain with deadlifting or squatting or whatever it is. And even just over the weekend, someone was messaging me, was like, I had groin pain when I'm in the hole for a squat. And it's like, yes, I understand all these things, and probably I can get you better. But like you said, I can probably give you like B work. But I was like, hey, go see my coworker Teddy, who used to compete in powerlifting. Like, he's the man. And it's just, and because we're cash based, like, it's literally money out of my own pocket. But like, I don't care about that. It's just, if I think that Teddy can get you better, which I know he can in this situation, then you're going to see Teddy. You're not coming to see me. I'm not trying to take your money or whatever it is, just because, it'll whatever, I can earn more money. And I think that is one of the pride things that not enough people are doing. I think that's the pride side of things that people maybe get caught up in a little bit. When you think about a general outpatient, and I think back to when I used to work at them, it's, let's say you just had an ACL tear, Mike. Let's say you are 16 years old, your mom's looking for physical therapy for you. They call into a clinic, and at least, again, for some outpatient facilities, I don't want to speak for all, is that they just look for the first available person. Your mom's like, oh yeah, Mike wants to come in at 4 p.m. on a Tuesday. And they look for the first open slot, no real thought process to who it is. And then boom, you're slot into there. And, I have coworkers from my previous facility. I'm not trying to bash anyone, but it's like, you have specialties. You are not specialized in treating ACLs. So don't treat an ACL. Just be like, push them to the people at the facility that are good with ACLs. Yeah. And it's like, if you think about just that subtle mind shift, how much better would outcomes be? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, way better, extremely better. If we just, like you said, swallow that pride, or say, well, everyone has to learn. Like when I was first learning, I'm blessed. I had great mentors at my first job. We would co-treat patients. Like that's how I learned. I would co-treat because yeah, I don't know everything. They could, but it's still, they can still be getting the A+ care by someone managing it, but I could still be there for the majority of it. And then sometimes they see me, sometimes they see them, until I get more and more confident. Because you do have to learn at some point. But if you don't have any interest in treating those patients and you don't have experience in it, then don't take them
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
send them to someone else.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know.
It's just, I find it very hard to imagine that, let's say it's a 16-year-old basketball player that wants to get back to playing high school and then eventually college basketball. Could you imagine someone who never works out, has never played a sport in their entire life, and doesn't understand how to load? Like, how is this person going to even remotely help this person with an ACL? You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
that's the whole concept of like, what we're talking about right now is like, what do we believe has to change as far as decreasing these high re-tear rates? And there's 10 to 15 themes that you and I can probably spin off right
Yeah.
now. And we've already talked about a couple of them where like, I think that there needs to be a little bit more specialized. And if your facility sees a lot of high volume, like hire someone or train someone who has like the ACL person. And then that ACL person can train 3 or 4 other PTs under them and co-treat, like you said. That's in a perfect world. And I don't think that's the most
Yeah.
practical
Yeah.
situation
Not
because
exactly.
there's a lot of politics and money when it comes to um, running a business. And I fully
Yeah.
understand that volume matters because you have to pay the bills and keep the lights on, and it definitely matters. But I think that's definitely one of the things that needs to improve as far as like the education side of things. I think that you guys are putting out a ton of good content when it comes to ACL rehab. I do my best. And then there's like people like Steph Allen out there who are pushing the narrative for good ACL rehab. I know Nicole Srdika, they're also like, there's good social media presence out there when it comes to ACL rehab. And I think that between all of us, we are just trying to do the best to move the needle, just a little bit
Mhm.
better. And I don't know if it was like for you guys, I know when did you graduate PT school?
Graduated 2017.
Okay. So you're only a couple years after me, but
Yeah.
when I was in PT school, PT Instagram was not a thing. Like that just didn't
Yeah.
exist. You know what I mean? I know, and there was that first wave. I think you guys are part of that first wave. Teddy, Jacob Harden. There's like other rehab people like you guys that were the kind of the front runners of it, and then you have people like me and Caleb Burgess and some other people. Like we were like that like second wave of people that came after you guys. And it's just I think that it's such a cool thing because we can impact so many PT students and patients out there that
Yeah. That's amazing.
never in a million years what we thought could have done it. And I don't know about you guys, but I would probably bet money that when you started your social media, there's no way you guys like, oh, we're gonna reach whatever
No,
you guys are at 600 some thousand right
never,
now, right? You
never,
did it just because
never
you
the
were like,
goals, never a thought. Yeah.
yeah, you're just like, I'm gonna put out some good content and let's just see where it goes.
Yeah.
I talk about it a lot. I still remember when I started mine, I told my wife, I was like, I hope I can get 5,000. I was like, that'll be really, really cool. And then I've been very fortunate and blessed to grow to whatever I'm at now. And a random funny story is actually one of my closest friends, Patrick. I was like, I told him I was starting it, and then his immediate response was like, why? Because in his head he was like, this is dumb. He's like, this is stupid. And maybe it was at the time, but I think now he sees why I did it. So I think he's kind of
Yeah.
backed off of that question now.
Yeah.
But just to revert back about like, are there any other major changes that you believe need to happen in order to decrease retail rates? Because I think that's one of the biggest takeaways that I want people to have from this episode with you. Because I know that you are, I would say, like you're definitely someone who specializes in ACL rehab. You see them to a high volume, so you have extensive experience. So what are your thoughts on what else we can do?
I think we already kind of hit on it. The two things are, we mentioned education, and we've been mainly talking about education of providers, which, yeah, that's important. But at the same time, there are many providers, like you just mentioned, that are very good at this and they specialize in this and they do it. So it's more, in my opinion, it's educating the public, educating the people, and having better communication amongst people, amongst providers and people, surgeons and people, whatever it may be, so that the patient is more informed. If the patient is more informed, they will go into that decision-making surgery process with, do I get surgery or not? Like, if they're more informed, that's even a fork in the road. If they go down surgery, most of them probably should, if they're going with level 1 stuff, they have more decisions on, okay, what should it look like at this point? What should I be doing? They're loading. Should I be doing that? They're doing BFR. Should I be doing that?
Mm-hmm.
And if they're more educated, in my opinion, like what we're trying to do through our platform is educate the public on ways to take care of themselves and be more proactive. If you have an understanding, now you understand that there may be something else out there that should look a certain way, you can now take control of your health, and you can speak up to your PT, to your surgeon, to your athletic trainer, or Google some other stuff. Be like, okay, I'm going to take control of this because now I know that there may be something different. But it's what we were saying before. If you don't know there's anything else that's different out there, then you will be thinking that you are getting A+ care when it may be B care, which is still great, but there may be something else out there. And it's all about awareness, which we're doing through this podcast, which we're all doing through social media and through everything that we're putting out. I think awareness is just the biggest thing. And that's just not for ACL retear rates. I think that's for health and wellness as a whole. If we can get better educated with good advice out there, it's going to only help the population. Rather than the opposite way.
Yeah, I love that. That's I 100% agree with what you just said. And just out of curiosity, I know that you see a lot of ACLs. Do you see anybody who comes to you who's, like 2-3 months out, who came from another facility and like heard about you and came to see you? Do you see a lot of those?
Many, but they're usually a little bit further than that. Are usually like 7, 8, 9, or a year out.
Okay.
Most of them.
I got to ask you this. I know this wasn't scripted and it wasn't on here, but what are a couple of the major issues that you see with these people who are 7, 8, 9 months out?
Quad strength, biggest one.
Yeah.
This is hands down. It's the easiest one to test. Here's a dynamometer. Whoa, your quad's fucking weak. Okay, we have a lot of stuff to do before we go back to your ladder drill that you're already doing. Before we go to all those jumping things that you're telling me you're doing, we got to work on this stuff first. That's by far the biggest one. They're not strong. Once we get strong, then we can do all the other fancy stuff. But you got to get strong first.
Do you have people who are? I'm guessing that on that same scale, you have people who are doing too much, because if they're 7, 8, 9 months out and they're super weak, they're probably already running, jumping, whatever it is.
100%. And then they're wondering why they're in pain, or they're wondering, I'm like, well, here's the reason why. Yeah. And yes, we're not going to do surgery for that. You don't need surgery. Your surgeon doesn't need to go in there and clean anything out. You just need to get your quad a lot stronger.
Yeah.
Like way stronger, not a lot stronger, like way, way stronger. And we got to slow down a little bit.
Yeah.
So,
and I'm guessing that after they do a full session with you, they're kind of like, oh yeah, so this is what a quality works looks like.
Yeah. Yeah. And most of them, the fact that they're already leaving their place means that they've already had those thoughts. Maybe they saw your Instagram. Maybe they heard this podcast. Maybe they, again, it all comes to awareness. If they weren't aware for the first 6 months, you can't fault anyone. Yeah. Once they become aware, then they're going to start searching out things, and hopefully they find their answers. Whether it's me, whether it's someone else, or whoever they go, but hopefully they find whatever answers they're looking for.
Yeah, it's I 100% agree with you. I see a lot of people who are 4, 5, 6 months out. Some people a little bit further. And I think before we hopped on before we started recording, I told you that even most recently, as last week, I got a girl who was 16 weeks out. And one of my questions I ask people is like, what does your previous program look like? And, are you strength training and all that kind of stuff? And at 16 weeks, you should be loading. And I asked her, I was like, have you picked up a weight? And her answer was no. I was like, are you kidding me? You're 16 weeks out and you haven't picked up a single weight yet. And then, I like to do stuff like watching her do like a forward heel touch to see how she's doing with that, and just could not control that. And then, so it's just, those are the challenging conversations, because they think they are at 4 months, as in physically at 4 months. And then you're like, no, you're like, I don't tell them this, but it's like, you really physically only at like 6 weeks, and it's always so frustrating to me, and maybe sometimes too frustrating, or I take it almost too personally and I get mad. But like you alluded to, and maybe something I need to learn from myself, is that maybe it's not the person's fault. Maybe it's just they're following whatever protocol it is that says that don't pick up weights, and it's just do this, this, and this, and this at 6 to 12 weeks. And at 12 weeks and 16 weeks, you should do this, this, and this. And that's a side thing of what I think is wrong with ACL rehab also, is that there's too many time-based protocols out there. I don't know if it's like that in your area, but for us, we have a lot of time-based protocols. And before we hopped on, we both were like, yeah, we don't look at protocols anymore. You just load and go. You know what I mean? set the foundation right for full range, quad contraction, decrease swelling, and then let's just load and get strong. And I am in definitely agreement with you that one of the biggest issues I see is the fact that these people are severely underloaded. Quad looks not great, to say the least, and it's inhibiting their ability to do ADLs, let alone trying to run or jump or cut. Yeah, it's never an easy conversation to have, and I don't know if it's whenever I am getting ready to deliver this news to them, I almost take like a deep breath and then I kind of just all out there. But yeah, I know that you and I could talk for hours about this topic easily, and I think that at this point I'm definitely going to have to get you on for a part 2, because I think that I think there's more and more to talk about, and there's more that we need to try to do to push this motive forward about how we can decrease retear rates. Like I think that if I can, even between us and other good PTs out there, like if we can drop these retear rates down to like, I don't even know, my dream is 5.
Less than 10 would be amazing.
Yeah. I think if we can push that by the time you and I retire in 30 or 40 years, I think I'll be extremely happy. But at the end of the day, I think that we are trying to do our best to use the platforms, like you said, that we've been given to educate the public, because there are plenty of people, not even just in the US. I'm guessing that you probably get a lot of DMs from UK, India, whatever it is out there, who are like, I need help with ACL rehab. And it's like, we can't help everybody, unfortunately. I definitely appreciate you coming on, Mike. And I think that we're going to have to get you on for a part 2 at some point in the near future.
I appreciate being on. This is an awesome topic. Again, awareness is key. Just everyone listening, just keep reading, keep listening to these podcasts, keep following Wes, just be educated. That's like the one thing I can ask, just be educated.
Yeah. Appreciate you, brother. And do you mind just plugging in your social media and your websites and where people can find you if they're interested in what you guys do?
Yeah. So they can find us at the Prehab Guys. It's then PREHAB GUYS on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. We have a TikTok. Haven't looked at it. Don't really know how to use it. I think there's LinkedIn too. And then the website. It's all the same. So the Prehab Guys.
Gotcha. And thanks, Mike. And then for those of you who don't follow the Prehab Guys, I highly recommend following them. They are 3 really, really great guys who are really trying to push this field forward. I know that I followed them for a little while, and it's been great just interacting with them. And I'm excited to see just what the future holds for you guys and all the great stuff that you guys have ahead of you guys. And I definitely look forward to having you back on in the future.
Thank you, Wes. I appreciate it. I love following your stuff too. Like, keep educating the public, like keep getting the people more knowledgeable, keep getting other PTs and physios more knowledgeable, because if we can raise the bar just a little bit, it trickles down. That there's a trickle down effect for everything. So the favorite quote of mine is teach one, treat many. I love it. Help one aspiring student learn a little bit more, then they're going to help hundreds of thousands of patients, tens of thousands of patients throughout their clinical career. So
yeah, definitely appreciate you. And I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode.
Thank you for watching today's video. Please feel free to like and subscribe and share it on your social media platforms. If you're interested, I have started an Acl Mastering Group, which is a growing library of content centered around ACL rehab. It has exercises ranging from immediate post-op to late-stage sport-specific movements and everything in between. It's a growing library and currently holds over 250 videos. There's content centered around assessments, movement breakdowns, exercise breakdowns, case studies, and a whole lot more. You also gain access to a private forum where you can engage with like-minded people, ask questions, share research articles, and share resources. If you're interested, please feel free to click the link below. Thank you for watching.